Welcome to the Pineapple Perspective. I am ecstatic to have an incredible guest today. I know we have a lot of fantastic industry leaders, but I'm really excited for this one. This is a gentleman I don't see on a lot of shows. I see him around at a lot of conferences, but I don't see him spilling his guts on the internet every day. So we're going to drag some secrets out of him. We're going to get to know him. Jim Bitticks, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, super excited to have you. I thought I travel a lot, Jim, but I think you have me like double at least.
I was doing it the last year or two on purpose, and I'll probably take a bit of a pause and do it a little less in the next year or two. So,
Yeah, I'm right with you there. We're definitely cutting back a little bit next year for sure. Now things are built. You gotta stay home and get things done. Well, very good, Jim. We'll start the show off every time asking our guests before we really get to know them one key question: what does hospitality mean to you?
at the end of the day, what hospitality really means is taking such great care of others that everything else is forgivable, if that makes sense. So when you talk about like service in a restaurant, if you do such a great job, even when something's wrong, if you do such a great job with the hospitality side of it, with the friendliness and taking good care of the guest, then even if there is something wrong, they're very forgiving. They're not likely to post it on a Yelp or Google. They're likely to give you the benefit of the doubt and come back and say, "Oh, that nice young man. I don't want to get him in trouble, but my food is all wrong. Could you
Yeah,
please help me?" So I don't know how that rates with all the other answers of your
that's a
previous.
great answer. I love it. It's a very different way of saying a similar thing, but it's powerful. It's impactful the way you said it. Really, really appreciate
When we talk about it, it
it.
gives us halo effect. Halo effect hospitality. You're so friendly, you're so nice that it sort of gives you this halo, and they're not going to dog you out on Google. Rather, they'll come up and just say, "Hey, my food wasn't right," or even if they don't come up and tell you that the food wasn't right, they feel bad. Like they're just like, "Oh, I don't
Yeah.
want to, I don't want to get that nice young man in trouble." Like,
All of us hospitality people have that, right? We've all sat in those restaurants or been through that and be like, all right, I'll just let it go. Like, I don't want to send the food back or it's cooked wrong or they forgot my avocado. I'll deal with it and we just move on, right? All right. So, Jim, where did that come from? Where did that thesis? What made you say that? Tell us a little bit about how that was born inside of you that that's where your belief came from.
I think actually a lady I still work with today, her name is Carolyn Kennedy. She's our chief development officer at Dave's. I met her when I was 19 years old and I was working at Rally's Hamburgers. She was our area manager. I think I learned a lot of my service, ethos or whatever from her. I sat through some guest service class or workshop that we had for hourly managers way back in probably 1994, and she started with this question. She goes, "Yes or no, the guest is always right." And everybody, she pointed at everybody and they all said, "Well, yeah, obviously, the customer's always right or the guest is always right." Everybody agreed with that. And then there's the one or two sort of curmudgeonly or angry, negative people that are like, "No, they're not always right." And then her answer, she goes, so I think I said yes. Of course, the guest is always right. And she goes, "You guys want to know what the real answer is?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, the real answer is that it doesn't matter if the guest is right or wrong. What matters is that the guest is unhappy and our job is to fix it. And so when you take away the sort of the ego play of you're right, I'm wrong, especially if it's like you didn't put it into the computer right or you heard them wrong, whatever it is, when you take away whose fault it is and you just say, "Hey, the actual problem is that you're not happy and my job is to find a way to fix that," then it really changes everything. It changes your entire approach to fixing it. If it's no fault, if there's no blame on anyone, then your attitude about how you resolve it changes, I think, pretty significantly. So I think that led me to, and honestly, actually, it's funny. The very first day I started at Rally's Hamburgers, I was 19 years old. And I started, I think, as a fry guy. They made me put on a pin, like a button, and across the middle of the button it said "yes!" exclamation point in yellow letters, and then around the outside edges it said, "Is the answer? What is the question?" Yes is the answer. What is the question? And that was Rally's hamburger sort of service mentality was to just say yes to whatever the guest asked for. And so that sort of set, I think, the tone in my head about, do what they want. That's the whole point. And then I found also that something my grandma used to make me do, and I used to do it begrudgingly when I was a little boy. She made me say, yes, ma'am. If I would say, she'd say, do you want to go to the movies? And I'd say, yeah, let's go. And she'd say, yes, ma'am. And then I was supposed to parrot back and say, yes, ma'am. But it taught me to say yes, ma'am or yes, sir to older folks. And then later on, when I was like a manager or whatever at a restaurant and I'd have some older guests, I'd say, oh, yes, ma'am, I'll take care of that for you right away. And it just was very freeing, or it created a whole flow to a service interaction or exchange that it was generated from that hospitality, or that hospitable response. And it interesting learning. I guess it's like three different things, and I'm sure there are many more that sort of fall into the soup of how you end up with the philosophies that you end up with. But I definitely have always, at least from as far back as I can remember, thought of service and unhappy guests in the way that I just described it. It doesn't matter, who's right or wrong. It just matters that you're not happy.
Yeah, I love that. That's really impactful. That's powerful. It's a great foundation for everybody. I grew up, my father was ex-military. So, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, was everybody, no matter who it was. And gosh, once in the mid to late 20s, and people started being offended, especially women. You're offended because we felt like you were calling them older. And it kind of has died off. So, you and I are the same generation. Like, that was the requirement, is respect.
It's like the earliest version of code switching, I feel like.
Yeah.
Like when you start dealing with an older person, you immediately default to yes sir or yes ma'am, but it definitely works.
I came up in finer hotels and fine dining, and we kind of had a similar, I developed a similar philosophy around how do we get to yes. Somebody asks you something, you don't need a book or a guide or a checklist or a manual to tell you what you can say yes or no to, or what our policies are or not. Find a way to get to yes. And that's a little bit of the Will Dara thing too now, right? It's like, be aware, be present, listen, engage, be human. If you were them, have empathy, what would you want? How do we get to that point of yes? And it may not be exactly what they asked for. It may not be the remedy they're looking for, but it's something more than no, or I'm sorry, that's not our policy. Or when you get a manager, right? You have to empower your team. That's similar philosophy that I have. So I love that. So Jim Bitticks, for those that don't know you, president and COO of Dave's Hot Chicken, one of the fastest growing fast casual chickens ever, and continues to explode. I don't think there's a lot of people in our industry that don't know who you are by at least by name or by brand. I said before we got on, I feel like you're a little bit of an enigma. A lot of people know who you are. Some of us know you a little bit and get to spend time with you and have chats with you and dinners. But I don't think people really know where you've come from, what you've done. I mean, you shared the rally stuff. The Carolyn story is important because Carolyn is at Dave's Hot Chicken with you. So you've been with some of these same people for your entire career. And that's very, very unique in our industry, as I know you're aware. Tell us the bio and history of Jim Bitticks.
So let me just comment on Carolyn. Carolyn and I have worked together at 4 different brands now, if you can believe that. I turned 51 this year. I'll be 52 in a couple of months. And I have known her since I was 19 years old, which is crazy. Where did I come from? My very first job was Jack in the Box when I was 15. I was in ninth grade, and it was on my walk home from high school. And I filled out an application. They said you had to be 16 to work there, so I changed the year, and they hired me, and pretty soon they hired my best friend at the time also, and we both were just working at Jack in the Box making money. I'm the son of a single mom who was putting herself through school, and so having a job and getting $200 every couple of weeks, I think I didn't she never wanted money from me, like, I didn't have to, like, pay for anything, but it took a lot of pressure off because I could just buy whatever I wanted for myself if I wanted something. The first thing I bought was a bike so that I could get to work, and I sort of reoriented my entire life from that moment forward, to picking up hours or picking up shifts and, finding my way up. through quick service restaurants, from Jack in the Box. I did a short stint as a busboy, semi-waiter, line cook at a Bonanza Steakhouse when my mom moved. My mom graduated with her PhD, got a job, and we moved to Missouri from Arizona. And so that was a 2-year detour that was kind of wild. When I came back from Missouri, because both of us hated living there, it was just so different from what we had spent most of our time doing. I ended up back at Jack in the Box, found my way up through a shift leader training program, then jumped over to Rallies, essentially a few stops along the way. But ultimately, Rallies got picked up by Carl's Jr. CKE Restaurants for a short period of a 5-year period of time, where they managed a bunch of Rallies that were west of the Mississippi, because Rallies was a little top heavy and had gotten a little off course, and so they were trying to get Rallies back on course. And Carl's ended up being my way up through all the levels. So I landed at Carl's as a GM. I got promoted to a multi-unit. Then I moved to California and worked my way through district manager, regional director, regional vice president, and vice president of operations. I worked with Carolyn at Rallies, Carl's, and then she called me when I was at Carl's. I'd moved to Texas for an expansion market thing, and she said, "I just started at Blaze Pizza, and we need an ops person. You should come work here." And I go, "I've never heard of Blaze Pizza. And how many locations are there?" And she's like, "There's one." I was like, "Carolyn, I got 3 kids. I'm married. That's crazy." Anyway, it just worked out. Carl's had made a leadership change where a lot of stuff changed, and the opportunity opened up, and I jumped at it because it was great to just be able to make that change. And Blaze turned out to be, at the time, the best decision I ever made. I went to Blaze as VP of operations and later became chief restaurant officer, which I was later told was a BS made up title. And I was like, I don't think it was BS, and I don't think it was made up. I asked for that title. Chipotle had one at the time. Panera had one at the time. McDonald's had one at the time. I thought it was sort of like the cool new thing, and the fact that they were offering a chief level position, and I was handling everything from ops, training, construction. And it was all things restaurant related. Actually, our mutual friend Jim Mises is the who I call my phone a friend mentor. I call him for anything I don't know something about. He always knows something about. And he was our CEO and help me get to those new heights or those new levels. Blaze went through a private equity deal, and as private equity deals tend to do, there were a lot of internal changes and adjustments. I found myself with the opportunity right in the middle of COVID to jump over to another new brand, which was Dave's Hot Chicken. And that turned out to be, now I say, each thing I always go, "Oh, that was the best decision I ever made." And definitely Dave's is now the best decision I ever made, professionally at least. I've had the opportunity at Dave's to become the chief operating officer and president, which I feel like is sort of like the $25,000 level on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. People are like, "Well, don't you want to be the CEO?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I mean, someday." But in my mind, like, just hitting that president level, sort of like, I'm done. Like I could get hit by a bus tomorrow and I'm going to be okay. Like, I feel like I hit the jackpot. It's a great role. It's a great job. I feel, and I think all jobs are good. Like, I'm just saying, like, when I was thinking about, like, what does my progression look like, to start as a restaurant kid and end up the president of a brand that just sold for $1 billion. It's like so cool. The I think the bigger, better piece is to also be a franchisee, which I've had the opportunity at Dave's to become a franchisee. My partners and I have the Inland Empire area of California. We had just opened our 4th location, and we have a signed lease for our 5th location. And that part to me is like mind blowing, because that first day on the job at Jack in the Box, everyone was running around talking about the owner was coming and how this is a franchise. And I didn't know what any of that meant. I just assumed the owner was some big conglomerate, and the idea that it is like single owner and you get to keep the profits after you pay a certain percentage and all that. I mean, I was 15. I had no idea. And so, to go from age 15, restaurant kid, to age 51, franchise owner and president of a brand, like who would have thought? I wouldn't have. So, it's been a very fun and cool ride, and all the stuff you learn as you come up, it all becomes part of the larger soup, of who you are and how you, act and how you operate. And so I don't think there are any, there's no like one thing that led to another thing. I can tell you, I love presenting, or I love speaking to groups, whether it's a group in my company, or I've had the opportunity to do like a couple of keynote type things or whatever to people. I did one for Shara Kanzler at Fast Casual. That was like a banking summit. I mean, I was happy. I was like, sure, I'll go keynote the banking summit. I don't know what to tell these people, but I love that whole thing. And that came from we had a centralized team orientation at rallies when I was 19, and I guess I was the only one that was willing to get up on a Saturday morning at 7 o'clock and go run the centralized team orientation. But I connect that back to Carolyn too. Like she like put me in that place, and I actually really like doing it, and so it's turned into a whole thing that I love doing now. So each one of those experiences I think builds on, and it becomes part of the next experience or part of the next. I would say next success.
This is like talking to an impending Hall of Fame quarterback. But at the end of the day, you're still on the field. There's still a lot in front of you. You're in your prime, and you feel like you've hit the top. But we know by watching on the outside, there's more to come. It's pretty awesome to be able to hear that story. You're very humble, and you've done some insane stuff. Two of the fastest growing fast casual brands in history. Forget the legacy stuff that we all know with McDonald's and these other brands. This is the future. This is now. You're building the future with these brands. And Blaze was very unique. So you've been with the same team from Blaze, went over and did Dave. And that's very unusual as well. And to duplicate and build on that success is very really rare as well. So what was it at Blaze that let you guys go from one store to over 300 stores in less than 5 years, which is the Hall of Fame stat that will be on your plaque because that was the fastest restaurant brand to ever get to 300. And then you guys, all as a collective, those are in this brand new startup, and you do it again, and you do it better, bigger, and incredibly fast. What are some of those secret sauces in Jim's world? If I'm following Jim around at store 3, 5, 15 in Blaze, or store 5 down near 50 at Dave's Hot Chicken, what are those contiguous and repeatable and scalable things that are in your playbook, that are your Bible, that others can learn from? So whether they're independent or small chain or emerging, or they're like me, executive at 552 unit store or brand, tell me 3 to 5 of those secret bullet points that we need to really use as our foundation or bedrock.
Okay, well, let me start with sort of the background story. So, when I was at Carl's, I moved to Texas because Texas became an expansion market for CKE restaurants. They got off to a little bit of a rough start, and my boss and the president of the company made me an offer I couldn't refuse, to move to Texas and to go sort of try to fix it or make it better. As I went there, we were in very fast growth mode. Carl's had taken Texas and sold like 300 franchise units, and then taken small territories in three major markets and started to grow all of those. And it was really hard, and it was really hard for lots of different reasons, but just the speed of growth, plus it's a brand new concept. You're trying to make a splash in a market where you've got a legacy player like Whataburger that's super strong and everybody knows and everybody loves. But you can't also have it be completely not profiting. So there are a lot of like different struggles and pressures. And as I got there, I got a lot of people to move from California with me to Texas, who later also moved with me to Blaze Pizza back to California. So the group of people the group of people that I'm currently connected to and are part of my larger team, we've actually been together. Carl's, then Blaze, and then Dave's. So I want to say we have from the Carl's experience, a lot of us have what I call a trauma bond, because that was a really tough change to go from California with the labor pool that's available there and the brand recognition and all of those things. You think you're just going to go and like plop in a restaurant, it's going to be great and everything's going to work really, really well. And then when it doesn't, you start like tweaking and trying to figure out, okay, what's different? What do I have to do to make it be like California here, and so on and so forth. And there's a lot of struggle and toil that goes through that. As we were doing the openings, and right when I moved to California, my existing boss at the time retired, and they brought in a new guy, and that new guy was pretty tough. And he came in with wanting to make a name for himself, and super smart guy, like knew so much about operations, knew more about restaurant operations in his little finger than like my whole body, and could articulate it. The biggest thing I learned from him, and I learned a lot from him, even though he was a little bit tough on us as a team. But the biggest thing that I learned from him was this sort of ability to articulate what was going on operationally and why it was so important to the machine of the restaurant. I remember sitting in a restaurant one time with him, and he goes, "What's she doing wrong?" And I gave him my thoughts, and he goes, he basically goes, "Wrong. She's not looking ahead." And he goes, "If she was doing her job properly, she'd be thinking about where's that guest that's walking in the door going next, and then after that, and then after that, and she'd be ahead of that guest by 2 steps or whatever." And I thought, "Oh, that's really interesting." That's something that I could tell you that I know internally, when I'm running a shift, for example, like where you move, where I'm supposed to go, what I'm supposed to do is sort of innate, or, like it's a learned thing, but I got what he was saying exactly.
Yeah.
And the way he articulated it made a light bulb go off in my head about, that being able to articulate what they're supposed to be doing. Not just assuming that, it's sort of like you see people play basketball. My son's a really good basketball player. Well, they're both, all my kids are great. I don't want to say anything there. But my oldest son was very into basketball, and he played point guard, and he had really good court vision, and I really think that that's sort of the same analogy in the restaurant. And so when he articulated it, I then took that and I could articulate it myself. And another time we were in a brand new restaurant, and the service time was like at 6 minutes. And he goes, "How is it possible that this service time is on 6 minutes?" And I go, we opened an hour ago. These people have never been live in a restaurant. And he's, he's tough. Like I don't want
Wow.
to insult him in any way, because I actually really did learn a lot from him, and I appreciate like that I had him in my even though he was tough on me. I do appreciate his contribution to me and to my team. And he said, he goes, "Jim, you got 36 people on the clock." And there was that aha moment of like, "Oh crap, like he's not wrong." Like there's a 7 minute, we're about to be on 7 minutes for 2 biscuit breakfast order. And I'm sitting there trying to excuse it by saying it's their first day. And he's like, you got 30 people working. And I think from that moment, I sort of understood where some of the gaps in our training process at Carl's were. So for the next restaurant opening, like what I identified in that moment was that we never trained speed of service. We didn't train urgency, actually. We didn't train urgency. And so for the next opening, I built in all this urgency stuff, trying to create sense of urgency in the team, including, little speed races. A thing I learned doing the family puzzle challenge at a resort with my kids and my wife, where we were racing to put together a big floor puzzle against another family, and if you win, you get free ice cream sundaes. And so we layered that into the training. Every day they had to put a puzzle together at the end. And the idea is that it was like an analogy or metaphor for what we're actually doing in the training process. And then we did at the time, Minute to Win It. Do you remember that game show,
Yeah.
Minute to Win It? We did these 1 minute challenges that are like there's a Kleenex box game where you take a box of Kleenex and you have to empty the box one Kleenex at a time as fast as possible. And so we just created all these little icebreaker things that were around sense of urgency, and built our entire training process around the idea of urgency. And then I found immediate results. When we opened that store, we were so much faster. The team was so much more focused on going fast, and that was really important for Carl's, was to move orders really quickly. And so then when I jumped over to Blaze, and I actually, when you say, like, oh, you guys got all these restaurants open, I didn't even think it was possible, to be honest with you. I was sort of like, Carl's struggled to open 4 restaurants a year. How are we going to open 40? Because we had 40 the first year. And, it blew my mind how we were gonna do it. And on just team members, well, we built a team of NRO team members, hired a couple of NRO leaders, and then created a whole training program. And my right-hand guy, who I always try to make sure I call him out by name, his name is Juan Lopez, and he worked with me at Carl's, he came in as an assistant manager looking to move his way up to GM. And then when we needed somebody at Blaze, I called him. I said, "Hey, can you come to Blaze?" And he goes, "Yeah, but I want to be a trainer. I want to be like manager of training." I mean, we had 2 restaurants at the time. I was like, "You can be manager of training." Great, come on. And he's my senior vice president of operations and training today. That was back in well, I met him back in 2011, I think. So he's been right there alongside me the whole way, helping me build it all. But we built out all these training things, and it was great because we had the Carl's Jr. shared experience to base like the training programs off of. When we built the Blaze training program, it included all of the stuff that we had put into the Carl's program. It included the floor puzzles, but because I was the VP of ops, I had the puzzles made. The puzzles I used at Carl's, I bought at HEB. This was in Texas. I bought at HEB that were Spider-Man puzzles. The puzzles I had at Blaze were Blaze pizza puzzles. Like they were branded. We did all the games. We built all that into the training. We made the training process really fun. And everybody I met along the way, all the add-ons and stuff. There's always something that I sort of go, oh, that's their signature item that they put into the process. Referring back to Jim Mises, when he saw our training for the first restaurant, he said, "You should do a restaurant demo." I go, "What's that?" He goes, "When the employees get here, feed them, run them through the line, show them what Blaze is supposed to be about." And he said, they've never seen it before. It's a brand new brand. We had, at the time, that was restaurant number 4. No, restaurant number 3. And I said, wow, that's really good. And that became part of the Blaze process for the 370 restaurants we opened together. And then that was initially from the very beginning at Dave's. As part of the process, we do that same thing. We just built in all these little pieces that were designed to make it really immersive, really fun, and really interactive. And so you asked what the 5 things are that you have to do, I guess, to sort of be ready to scale, or to scale as much as at least Dave's and Blaze have been. I think you have to have really strong training materials, or training. I'll just call it materials. But like, when Juan and I landed at Dave's, we were started working with Chef Brad Kent. And he's a real chef, like a CIA certified chef, and he was really good. He was, and the food he created was great, and but he was very chefy, and he wanted everything to be very chefy. And when you scale, you lose some of the chefiness, and you have to just kind of almost, I don't say lowest common denominator, but try to get to where it can be very consistent. It needs to be consistent. And so we started working with him on taking a piece of paper that he had folded in fourths. That was his recipe book. And how do you build that out into, a training approach and platform? All those base materials are really important, especially in a franchise brand, because when you leave that first restaurant that you open for them, all the knowledge is gone. Everybody, only what you left with the employees, and then those people are going to turn. And so you have to have the foundational stuff built. I think that's a really key, very important piece of it. I also think that the brand ethos, I think I've used the word ethos already twice in the last 20 minutes, but the brand ethos has to be really clear and clearly understood by the trainers so that they can teach it and preach it to the new restaurants. The founders of Blaze Pizza are Rick and Elise Wetzel, and they are marketers. And so they had this whole brand built out, like, against this gigantic blueprint of where everything hangs together super well. Like, it's really connected. All the DNA
Yeah.
The DNA strand was really well developed, and so, the brand was individual pizzas, and a lot of the brand was built around individuality, including the artwork inside the restaurants, and the way we talked to employees. The uniform policy was around expressing yourself, and so that was part of the brand from the very beginning, and so understanding those pieces and then layering them into the training and the training approach, and then also picking employees that reflect what the brand's supposed to be about. There were a lot of team members that went out to open restaurants that were very much individuals. Carl's, which was created in a different time, had very specific uniform policies. The name tag went on the right. Guys couldn't have earrings or facial hair. They could only have mustaches, and the mustache couldn't extend below the corners of the lips, and like there were a lot of rules around how you showed up. And that, again, it's a completely different era. Elise wanted Blaze to be more like Starbucks, where it just had that cool feel. And so she put that out there right at the very beginning that, we're not going to do it like the legacy quick service brands. We want it to be very individualistic. And so understanding that and understanding what the brand is all about helped us be able to not only train franchise owners to do it, but also when we went to a restaurant, we were there for 10 days, impart or infuse those people with the brand before we left. And so things like, Blaze was very chef driven and chef led in terms of the food and all of that stuff. And so part of our NRO training process included the chef's demo. And the chef's demo was all of the different foods like the Ovalini mozzarella, the idea of putting sea salt, oregano, or Parmesan cheese on the pizza at the end, the crust, the dough. Like we did all these things that were like, I used to do a pretty good Chef Brad impression. And so, the idea is like if Chef Brad was here, what would he talk about? And we opened a location in Royal Oak, Michigan, which is just outside of Detroit. And that crew was very urban and very much like you would think that they would not care about Ovalini mozzarella or anything like that. And maybe that's sort of like a bias of some kind, but really you walk into that team and you sort of thought like, oh, these guys aren't going to care about any of this. And the moment you start telling them what gorgonzola cheese is, and you start letting them taste things, and here, taste the pesto, do you taste the basil? And this crew came to life. Like this team was just like perhaps they'd never seen a lot. I know I hadn't seen a lot of those
Yeah.
things, they hadn't seen very many of those things, but they were completely enthusiastic about all of the food stuff. And then on opening day, they're like, "Oh, you should try the Ovalini mozzarella. It's so fresh." They just like all the things we taught them, they just sort of like parroted back to the guests, and it was one of those experiences where you were like really impressed with sort of the process. So, I think you have to build the brand first, and then you have to build the brand into the training and be really, really clear on what those things are that have to be imparted upon the new people. And then I think the team that you bring in, the people that you choose, I think I mentioned that already, but the leader people have to really believe in it. So you really got to inspire folks to love what they're into, or to be really into the brand. I think Rick and Elise went a long way, and Jim, in creating that love for the brand at Blaze. I remember hearing Rick and Elise and Jim talking. I had that office next to the conference room, and I remember hearing Rick getting frustrated because franchisees wanted some directional stuff on the menu board or something. And he goes, everyone from Jim Bitticks to Chloe. Chloe's one of our best trainers. She was a team member. Everyone from Jim Bitticks to Chloe should know exactly what this brand is about. And I remember going, dude, if we don't know what the brand is about, that's on you. It's not on us. And then I had this other epiphany moment going, well, I'm the VP of training. Like it's probably on me more, you know what I mean? Like they brought me in to do it. So I think that's the moment when I realized like, okay, I got to build all these layers into it. So, and then after that, I think it sort of takes care of itself. I really do. When we built the training program for franchisees, when they come to the training restaurant, It was a 2-week training program, and at the beginning, I think we had the tone and the attitude of, like, they have a lot to learn in 2 weeks, and I think where we landed at the end is it's not so much about learning every single detail, it's actually about learning what the brand and the team and the culture is about, and then that is actually what then replicates out in the field, so I think I only gave you 4, but those are probably the 4, yeah, I think those are the 4 I'd say are pretty good.
Brand, systems, people is key. And then I would encapsulate all that what I use at Pepper Munch is pride. If we start with pride, right? And you've said it 7 different ways, you've used a lot of words. And I keep hearing a theme, and the theme is pride. If you spend time not teaching the technical, replicable, this is our policies, our procedures stuff, but you just instill love, pride, and affinity for the brand, for the team, for the leadership. And as you said it has to start at the top. That feeling has to come from the top.
We all really loved it. I loved Blaze from the moment I met it, if you know what I mean.
Yep. Yep.
From tasting the food for the very first time, meeting the Wetzels for the very first time, and then what's so crazy to me about the Blaze experience was I didn't know how much I knew. I didn't know how much I had learned in my experience at Carl's. Carl's is a very entrepreneurial, type of brand. It was started by a guy with a hot dog cart and his wife, and they turned it into this million, billion-dollar brand, and I just thought I was, like a district manager, you know what I mean? But, like, all the different experiences from doing local restaurant marketing to try to drive your sales because you had to hit your sales number in order to get your bonus, to managing the labor. Like one restaurant's busier during the day, so you move prep to the night shift, or vice versa. I mean, there's so many different things, but you go through that for years and you learn so much, and you don't even realize you learned so much. And when I worked at Jack in the Box, I desperately wanted to be a manager of a Jack in the Box restaurant when I was 18. When I was 18, they wanted to promote me to a shift leader. They sent me through this really strong shift leader training program. We were out of the restaurant for like 2 weeks, and you learned a lot, and you come back, and as soon as I came back, the GM said, "How would you like to start working on becoming an assistant manager?" And I was like, I would like nothing more than that. Like I was rabid. Like I wanted to be the second assistant manager of this Jack in the Box. And it wasn't about the money. I just wanted to like be responsible for running it and
Yeah.
and doing it. I I became like my whole thing. When I landed at Blaze, oh sorry. The training program at Jack in the Box was very prescribed. Everything it was very cookie cutter.
Yeah.
They had gone through, I think they were owned by Purina for a while, and Purina had a bunch of MBAs, and they built these training programs and restaurant systems that you do all the morning maintenance from 5 a.m. till 10 a.m. every single day. You do all the prep from 5 a.m. to 10 a.m. It was just everything was systematized. Carl's was none of that. Carl's
Yeah.
had very few of those well-developed systems. It was so scrappy, and I remember thinking negatively about. I was like, "Oh my god, Carl's is so behind the times." Like they're nothing like Jack in the Box. Like I remember having those thoughts when I was like sort of working my way through Carl's. And in retrospect, I'm so glad that Carl's was so entrepreneurial because I think it inspired my own entrepreneurial spirit. I think it like created all of these abilities to sort of work through problems. And, it's not just a cookie cutter schedule. You manage it based on the business and the needs and, so on and so forth. So the Carl's experience led to me at Blaze being really capable. And, I said Rick and Elise were marketers. They didn't know restaurant ops. Rick will tell you he hates restaurant ops. He's actually great at it. But he understands how things move and how they work and how things have to shift and whatever, or how they have to lay out in order for the restaurant to run well. He has an engineering background. Being the ops guy that had done a lot of restaurant stuff, I sort of found myself leading a lot of stuff that I would have I would have assumed I had no idea what to do. But we'd started talking about doing grand openings, and we had done so many grand openings at Carl's, especially in Texas, that this idea of creating an event, and you call the fire department and they'll bring out one of the trucks, and they'll let kids run through it, and it just creates this event, and all these people come out to see your restaurant on opening day, and it drives sales. And I mean, I didn't know I knew that. but when we had some slow openings at Blaze, I was like, well, let's see if we can get the fire department out. Let's see if we can do this. Let's see if we can do that. Let's put up pennant flags. Let's do bounce houses. Let's do balloons, wrapping around the building. Let's, all the things that everybody does. But, I don't think I would have known that stuff, had I not done the Carl's experience.
Jim, I got a lot of questions. I think we're gonna end up doing a part 2, honestly, because this is awesome. Um, 2 things you said that I think translate your entire career, like, definitely were applied in a way at Blaze and then were refined and even improved upon at Dave. You said team, right? And this creativity and this scale and this pride within humans. And it's proven very interesting because you have had this continuity with Carolyn for so long, with Juan for so long, and these other people. You really picked up the entire team at Blaze that you needed, and you went to Dave's, and Dave's, became what it became is what it is today. Talk just a little bit about that special sauce, that secret. Like, how do you keep these people together? It's such a transient industry, you do something really special, and then you add a few more people, you do something really special at Blaze, and then you curate because what I'm trying to get at is speed. Like, you guys have not only created this theme and this, as you said, this capability, this skill set, and applied it collectively with a lot of brand and vibe layered on that, but you've also found a way to distill that down, I think, somehow to the simplest or the most impactful steps that have to be taken. And you've applied that in your speed and your scalability, your breadth and depth is beyond remarkable. And most people tell you that speed and scale will hurt a brand, dilute a brand, make it harder on a brand, will sometimes crash a brand. So how is it? What is it that has allowed these brands and this team to just get better every time and maintain quality, maintain velocity and trajectory?
Well, I think, the strategy at Blaze was always franchising from the very beginning. The Wetzels had just done that at Wetzel's Pretzels and had done that, maybe not as fast as we did at Blaze, but they certainly sold a lot of the, franchises, and franchisees wanted to get, their players on the field quickly, so we sort of, I guess, we adjusted to what they, what the requirement was. Like, we built more teams. At the time, the U.S. Military was talking about downsizing the military so that they can fight 4 regional wars at one time rather than, like a major, like, world war. I remember that being talked about on whatever, television or whatever. And I sort of thought of the Blaze teams that way. We need to be able to open 4 teams or 4 restaurants at once, 4 independent teams, rather than just 1 or 2 that have to be sequenced. And so that sort of redundancy or contingency type planning, I started building out, okay, well, we have 4 actual teams, but Juan could go open a team, or I could go open a team, or, we had extra people. So I think the most we ever did at Blaze on a single day was 6. I think the most we've ever done at Dave so far was 9. And so in my mind, the setup was around being able to be flexible and being able to do a lot of locations because we had sold so many and franchisees were out finding sites. And when we jumped to Dave's from Blaze, the best thing about my Dave's experience from the very beginning was that I was able to bring everybody over from Blaze. Blaze had done a private equity thing and they wanted to upgrade the team and they wanted to make all these internal changes, which is completely their prerogative to do. But early influence in my life was the A Team. The beginning of the show starts with them telling the story of these 4 guys that, got kicked out of the military or whatever, or they were court-martialed. Yep. Whatever, and they've all got their own idiosyncrasies. None of them's perfect, but when they work together, it always kills. They do an amazing job together. Even though the one guy is a womanizer, the other guy is like crazy. Mr. T, what was it, BA? And he's obviously angry and whatever. And then there's George Papard, who is the colonel, who's, I love it when a good plan comes together, like, that whole thing. But point being that, not anybody is perfect. You don't have the most perfect, you can't wait for for everybody to be perfect, you know? Yeah, you take who you have, you develop their skills, you work them into certain roles, and then you can rely on them to always do whatever it is that they always do. That's sort of always been my like thinking around teams, whether it was when I was a shift leader and I was like, okay, well, she's the best cashier, she needs to be on cashier. It's aces in places type of thing. But
Yep.
she also might be like a real pain in the butt employee that wants to take a lot of breaks, but man, she sells a lot of drinks and fries, you know what I mean? So you learn to work through what their strengths and opportunities are. Another analogy is like the Mighty Ducks movies or Bad News Bears for older people, but you end up with this motley crew of people, but man, they sure can get it done. And so I always looked at my team as like there's nobody that's not valuable. Even when they're not good at something, the thing that they're doing, like maybe you reposition them, maybe you can help them get there. Maybe, sometimes maybe you change the role. Maybe somebody's so good at new restaurant opening presenting because that's a big part of getting the restaurant open is being able to present and get out all the ideas out. But man, they're not very organized, which what would you rather have? A really organized new restaurant opening leader person or somebody who can really inspire the team? What's your best pick, And I would say that the best pick is the one that can inspire the team because that's going to get more done. Okay. But I can't send a guy who's a total mess out to open a store because the franchisee is going to be mad. So what do? Well, okay, so you use him for the presenting and you bolster him with, this lady that's really organized, that's sort of his right-hand person or whatever, all those
Yep.
things. And so as I've tried to build teams, I always take those people along with me. I've got this guy on my team. His name's Brett Goodrich. I don't think I've ever mentioned him on any podcast or anything. He is my senior manager of smart things. That's what I tell people. He's really smart. He is terrible at replying to people's emails and always has been. Never been good at it, okay? But I don't have him on the team because he's super responsive on email. I have him on the team because he's a great problem solver. He stays ahead of stuff. He helps me stay ahead of stuff, like stuff I don't know about. I call him and I go like, "What does this mean? What's this chat GPT thing? What do I do?" And he'll be like, "Oh, okay." And he'll get me set up and like there's a lot of benefits to Brett. He's smart and strategic, all these things. And so I always try to find the good in the people or the strengths, and then I try to use them for their strengths to help us as a team, if that makes sense. So like I said, all these people are on my team that have been on my team for a long time. And I don't know that if somebody comes in and doesn't understand how it all plays together, they'll just be like, why is that guy on the team? Like, what does he do? Or what does she do? Or what's her contribution? And the moment I got to Dave's, I hired pretty much everybody. Within 2 weeks, everybody that was working for me at Blaze was working for me at Dave's. But we couldn't afford them. So I just hired them hourly. They were still working at Blaze. They were still doing their job. My guest response person that used to respond to all of our guest comments, she started working for me hourly. I think the first week, I don't even remember, but for $25 an hour. And she was responding to our guest comments and she already knew how. And we only had 4 restaurants at the time. So it was like not a huge major pickup, but I just started putting all those pieces into motion. And eventually when either Blaze was done with them or they were ready to be done with Blaze, they came over full time, allowed us to grow the sales base and the royalty base so that we could afford to pay people. But my first 2 hires were my first 2 permanent hires, full-time hires were Juan, and another guy that I've been working with since 2001. His name is Edgar Villa. He's my VP of ops for the company restaurants. And the joke I always make about him is that he and I have been together longer than he and his last 4 wives. But he's one of those guys that he just takes care of stuff, and he always has. I credit him for getting me promoted to the regional director and the VP level at Carl's because he was my right-hand guy when I was a district manager. And he just took care of so many different things. And I mean, we did it together, So I feel like the accomplishments of the past were done with other people. And so now my job is to bring those people along. Edgar and Juan are both part of my franchise group. And as we do other franchisee things or investee things, they're part of that team. My son Dylan, that I mentioned, the guy with good court vision, he's on our team. He's our director of training right now at Dave's. And it's funny because, I think there'll be a lot of people that would look from the outside and go, "Oh, court, yeah, he just gave that to his son." I don't have anything to do with him because I don't want people to say that. He
Yep.
works for Juan, and I know someone else will go, "Oh yeah, but Juan feels the pressure." Dylan started working with us when he was 15. He went on his first new restaurant opening team at Blaze, and I don't know. I think he just got hooked. I think he like really loves doing it.
By the way, I hear he's very creative. Jim Mizes has raved to me about your son and this training system at Dave's for over a year, probably. Had every time you've iterated, it improved in the videos he's told me about.
He's taken it completely to the next level. He's really good at it, and I sit back and I'm so proud and so impressed. But I know his development has been the conglomeration of all these people of Juan's input. My wife's by like I always give credit to my wife. Like, I mean, she was a stay-at-home mom that made sure they were all doing everything they were supposed to be doing. But, there's another guy on our team named Jose Ayala that we've been working with since Carl's too, that's been a part of Dylan's development. My other son, Nick, works for Dylan, and I get to see Dylan mentor Nick in a way that at 12 years ago, I would have told you what is never going to happen because he was too busy beating him up or trying to humiliate him in front of people, and he's like, they're both amazing. Nick is super smart, super, super creative. He's got such a path ahead of him. And then it's funny because I have another younger son, Connor, who is at all our NROs, our company, our franchise ones. He's running the register. He's 12, and he's been doing this for the last 3 years. And he's just sort of steeping in it also. I don't know. It's sort of like bringing back the family farm, but doing it through QSR restaurants. My daughter, who's my oldest, and her name's Alyssa. She has no interest. She has her master's. She's a school teacher up in San Francisco. And I last year I was like, "Why don't you come work with us?" And she's like, "Absolutely not. I have no." Yeah. But she worked at Blaze and she did new restaurant openings and she did all of those things too. But she's just like, that's not my thing. I don't want to do that. And so it's interesting.
Jim, I gotta tell you, I've heard some pretty consistent themes in all of your stories, which are really cool. It comes down to people. The people is at the top. We need to support or give them the tools and resources and let them do their job. And I gotta tell you, I feel like you've inspired and given me pride. You've empowered a lot of people through this conversation. I really appreciate it. Let's wrap this up with a little tiny bit of Dave's Hot Chicken commercial. Everybody knows Dave's. We'll learn the story in more depth as you talk on more stages and more platforms. But what is Dave's up to now? Because I think a lot of people would love to know post-acquisition, quote, investment, whatever you wanna call it, by Roar Capital at $1 billion. What's the future? What's the trajectory? Because what I think is really neat is that you have all stayed. The C-suite is intact. The leadership, well beyond the C-suite, is intact. Then you guys can take these checks and run off into the sunset and do your own thing. You're staying together, and that says a lot about the people and about the brand, about the ownership group at Rourke and allowing that to be inspired to be done. So what's the future? What's next for Dave's?
It's a lot more growth. I think that's Rourke didn't buy us when we were already at the top. They bought us where they still think there's so much runway ahead. I'm sure at some point, 5 to 7 or 8 years from now, they're going to want to monetize that in some way, whether that's an IPO or a strategic type of sale or whatever. I mean, they also have a reputation for holding a lot of their portfolio brands for a long time. So I'm not sure what their big picture strategy would be for Dave's, but I think ultimately they want to see us continue to grow, continue to build value through that growth. So we're very focused on international now. We got the whole country sold out. I think Hawaii is the only state that we don't have a signed franchisee in currently. I think we even have someone for Puerto Rico. So Hawaii's always been tough, but our next frontier is international. As much international as we can do. We have a 200 unit deal that we just signed with our UK franchisee. They're going to do pretty much the majority of Western Europe. which is wild. They've got 5 locations they've opened in less than a year, and they said, "Okay, you know what? We'll sign for 200 more," which is, I mean, that's just absolutely crazy, but good for them. I think, it's just about continuing to deliver a strong economic model for the franchise owners. They're the engine of growth. If they're making good money, they're going to keep opening locations, which then puts a lot of pressure on us to deliver same store sales. Which puts a lot of pressure on us to create really good marketing and programs that drive those same store sales. Keep selling Dave's. We said that we want to serve hot chicken to the world as part of our purpose statement. And so the idea that we put into that statement was that we're going to continue to franchise and we're going to be international and like a global brand, and that's where we're headed. Can I mention the work thing? You commented on that, or you
Sure.
included that in the question, you sort of don't know what's gonna happen when your company goes, up for a PE thing. Um, Carl's went through it and things were different a year later, very different a year later. Blaze went through it and things were different, I don't know, 6 months later. I mean, that was a really big flip-flop of sort of like what the focus was versus what the focus became. I was personally a little bit nervous about doing the work thing for us. Um, the benefits and the opportunities for all of the team to get a chunk of it, to get a piece of the bonus money. Everybody got a bonus. Everybody involved with the from like in the support center team. Everybody got a bonus that was equal to about a year's pay or higher. We were able to create out of the deal 19 millionaires, which is also crazy. And so the opportunity was, I mean, this huge opportunity to like impact all these people's lives. Bill talks about his own personal mission and what he's made our higher purpose at Dave's is to transform the lives of the people that work here. And that completing that deal really did do that. It
Yep.
really did. People are buying houses, people are getting nose jobs. I mean, like, you'd qualify changing or transforming somebody's life however you want, but nose job counts because that's something that's really important to some people or whatever. Anyway, that whole thing also made me nervous. I was like, man, I sure hope like 6 months from now we're not all going like, what did we do? I feel like at Blaze we sort of I know I did. I got a good check at Blaze, and I remember thinking I'd give this money back to have Blaze back. What has happened in the last 6 months has been Rourke has followed through on exactly the Rourke team, Jeff Hill, Mike Sharkey, and Mark Lawrence. They have all followed through 100% on what they said would be the way that they would deal with us and the way they would work with us. They have been hands off and supportive, and in no way have they been like they have not switched what the brand is supposed to be about in any way. They don't want to switch it. They say we're buying you guys as much as we're buying the brand. Like you guys
Yep.
keep running it and keep doing your thing. We've done a few I don't say big changes, but big initiatives internally that required their alignment and their support, and they've been nothing supportive. The main guy that I end up talking to most of the time is Jeff Hill, and I found a podcast that he did or an interview or something from 2009, and everything he said in that podcast, he is still saying today. Like the consistency of sort of how he thinks and how they do their thing is has it's like exactly the same, or it sounds exactly the same. I actually thought, is this really from 2009? Because this sounds like something he said 6 months ago to us when we were doing the process. So I think that we're all locked in and we're going to be here for a while. We do have one guy retiring, which we're sad to see him go, but we're replacing him with somebody that's going to be amazing. So it's a fine adjustment. And we did have one person, we're sold out domestically. She jumped over to another brand, but these are all positive things. These are all good things for those people. It's nothing like, no one's like, oh, we're done, we're tapping out or anything like that. It should still continue to be really good. All of the managers had, like the C-suite and VP level had equity, and we rolled over half of our equity as part of the deal. So I don't think anybody's incentivized to leave because we want to see
Right.
what can happen next. But I also think nobody wants to leave. Like this, the story's not over. Like, we're still doing this. We're still building. We're still opening great restaurants with long lines, and we want to keep it going for sure. The founders are still involved. Armand Oganesian, still our chief brand officer. Dave Capuchin, still our chief culinary officer, our chef. Everybody's still bought in. So
That's amazing. Yeah, I think it's because of the youngness still. There's a lot of energy. Brand is still in growth mode. The team, as you said, the structure of the entire scenario was incentivizing for people to stay and be appreciated, be cared for, have those changes in their life, but still have forward-looking opportunity that's meaningful and matters. And so I think it's a testament to, from the top down, how you guys have structured this system and the team and the ethos of caring about your people and caring about the product and caring about the franchisee and caring about how we grow, not just how you grow. So it's really inspiring.
I mean, it's a great story. Again, I think I made the best decision ever when I did whatever the last thing was, but for sure with Dave.
Well, Jim Bitticks, we're grateful for your time. We're grateful you took the time to have this conversation. I know it's going to be impactful, inspiring, informative for the audience. And I look forward to all the comments and reactions that we're going to get and messages we get. But I think we're going to have to follow this up in the future. And I know there's more things coming. There's things not yet announced out there. So I'm looking forward to watching your story and story of your team, Dave, and all the things you guys are doing, and looking forward to version 2.
Sounds good.
Thank you for listening to The Pineapple Perspective. If you loved today's episode, leave a review and a 5-star rating. I look forward to welcoming you back next time.